twisting through 7 suns of gold, and the gypsy was insisting that his story must be told. I came to in the morning, but I took it as a warning that you might be a treasure I could touch but never hold.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Soberful podcast. This is Veronica, and I am joined today by my very lovely colleague, Tamara Kirby. How you doing, Tamara?
Oh, I'm good, Veronica. How are you doing?
Good. Well, for the first time, I get really homesick when this happens, and it doesn't happen very often. It's raining here in Tahoe, and really properly raining, rain like we needed 6 weeks ago when the fires were going crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it always makes me homesick when it rains.
Yeah, because it rains a lot back where you're from, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, it does rain a lot. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I always get homesick.
Well, I know it's been a while since you've been able to go home, right?
Yeah, it's been, how long has it been? I saw my mum just before, the October before the outbreak, so 2019, and I was home. So it's been early 2019, I was home. Hopefully, for certain, we'll be able to go home next year. But yeah, I'm really homesick right now.
I bet.
So we're going to talk about today, we're doing an episode on getting through the holiday season sober and being aware of our triggers, because we are entering into a particular period of time where alcohol use and abuse is rampant and sanctioned and condoned and encouraged. And we wanted to kind of talk about this because we just see this struggle every year. And, it's one of the things that people, when they first get sober, it's kind of like, but what do I do at Christmas? What do I do at Thanksgiving? It's very hard for us to do that equation in our heads, because the equation in our heads has always added up to alcohol, this, and alcohol. So it's a renegotiation of getting through this time. And there's two things. There's getting through this holiday period sober and being aware of the triggers to drink. And it's also, this holiday period can also have real triggers and issues around family. It's lots of family pressure. Now, in America, there's Thanksgiving, which is the third week of November, and then a month later is Christmas. And those are two massive family events. And if you don't have the perfect family, which I'm good. Did you have the perfect family, Tamara?
No, not at all.
Yeah, not many of us did. There's all sorts of complications and difficulties. Now, in England, we don't have Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
So it took me a while to work this out. And I had to live in America to really see it, because everything's driven by commercialism. Right. And it's all driven by multinational companies. So in England, we have from the end of November right through to January 2nd, Christmas is this just massive thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, Christmas parties and shopping, and it's this one day thing. And really, that's all driven by commercialism. But in America, it's kind of broken up. You have Halloween, which is a very big event. It's not such a big event in England. It's a thing, but it's not anything like it is in America. Then you have Thanksgiving, and then you have Christmas. So we have all of that energy that you have dispersed over 3 different sort of events, all on one event. So Chip always says this. In England, after maybe the second week of December, you can't get anyone to do anything because they're all drunk and partying. And that's an exaggeration, but it is. It's like you got to go out and celebrate Christmas with the people you work with people from your yoga group, from people from your book club, from friends, other friends. There's just so many things you have to go out to celebrate Christmas. And I don't know. I don't see it's quite as crazy in America as it is in England, but there's certainly a lot of drinking, right, around this holiday season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in America, it really starts Thanksgiving through, the new year, right, is kind of like this consistent kind of drinking, especially in between Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's like, okay, so we have the same thing where the work parties, and alcohol is involved, to the book clubs, to the yoga groups, to everything, where you have to get together and celebrate the holidays. And it's just assumed that you'll be drinking and there's alcohol. And there's not really very many non-alcoholic beverages at those events.
What was that like for you when you were drinking? Because for me, it was like a pass to drink how I really wanted to drink, without kind of anyone criticizing it. Was it the same for you?
Absolutely. Same for me too. Same for me. Yeah. I mean, everyone overdid it then. And so they didn't really notice the type of drinking that I was doing. And so it was definitely a relief to be able to drink with other people during that time. So, and they drank very heavily, and so did I.
Yeah, that was always the big thing for me. December was a pass to drink how I really wanted to drink, openly, without criticism, because your get out of jail free card was always, it's Christmas. Like, even though it was like December 4th, which is like, it's Christmas. And I see so many people doing that. How was your first Christmas sober?
Oh my gosh. I felt like someone had ripped my skin off and was like poking my nerves.
Wow.
I was very edgy. I mean, I was very edgy anyway in early recovery. And so add my first sober holidays to it, and I just felt very uncomfortable in my skin, very uncomfortable. And I didn't really know how to navigate those feelings especially, and then the pressure to engage in drinking.
So what did you do? Did you stay away from it, or?
No, I stayed away from it.
Yeah.
I did. I just could not, obviously I still had to deal with family and stuff, but I turned down a lot of the social events that were involved around the holidays because I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah, same here. My first Christmas, I was still in Florida, and for some insane reason, I thought it would be a good idea for my mum to come over and spend Christmas with me. And I feel like, looking back, it was actually, the visit was okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working at a hotel at the time, and I remember there was a family there, and I was like, hey, I'll babysit New Year's Eve. And they were like, oh, really? Wow. And I'm like, yeah. I did that deliberately because I wanted to be like safe. I didn't want to be tempted to go out, because where I lived in Key West, New Year's Eve was, my last drunk Christmas and New Year was the millennium. And my cousin came over from England to spend the millennium in Key West, because there was all this, I don't know if you remember, there was all this kind of like, it's the millennium. If you don't have like the most amazing plans ever, you're a loser.
Right.
So like everyone was kind of that mindset that we had to do this like extras. But I mean, it was I look back and how stupid that was. Anyway, I still feel embarrassed about this. We went out on New Year's Eve. I lost her within an hour and didn't come home for 2 days.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of my nights.
I was so embarrassed. And so New Year's Eve was very crazy where I was. So I had a plan ahead, like I'll babysit, because then I can I was responsible enough to not want to drink in any like that situation. And I was not tempted to go out, and I had a plan, and that was helpful. That was helpful to have that. And I did the same thing. I just kind of laid low, I just kind of, I just didn't want to go. And the thing is, where the drinking that was around me it was all frenzied drinking, right? It wasn't, I don't know. I mean, I guess there was people there having a glass or two of wine, but what I was seeing was like everyone was getting completely trashed.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, when you're not doing that anymore, it's just like, you just can't go near it.
Right.
Yeah. So that was my first sober Christmas. And then, I mean, for me, I found for a long time the holidays very, very triggering in so many ways. And it was really about kind of that whole perfect family thing. Like when I was growing up, my mum she was a single parent. She had mental health challenges. And you get to an age, don't you, where you kind of see other people's families and you realize that yours is different.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a couple of friends that their Christmas just seemed amazing. And mine never did. Like when I was young, a lot of my toys were often secondhand and we didn't have much money and that kind of stuff. And, my mom had a lot of mental health issues that meant that things just didn't happen the way they needed to happen, like meals and things like that. So I always felt this kind of emptiness and longing when I saw all these picture perfect images in the media and adverts, but also what I perceived around me, that Christmas was this wonderful time of family and coming together and people who loved and liked each other. And that wasn't my experience. It wasn't like that for me. And I, for a long time, it always made my stomach clench for like a whole 6 weeks of that time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So if you were to look at pictures of my family at the holidays, they would probably look like what you were desiring for your own experiences.
Because there was a lot of kids and there was a mom and dad.
Right. There was a lot of kids, the mom and dad, the kind of extravagant. I mean, I have to tell you, like my mom hangs like 3 or 4 Christmas trees in the house. I mean, it was overdone. I mean, it's a huge production of putting up all these decorations. And I mean, she spent years collecting all this stuff. And so it looks like a storybook Christmas when you look at the pictures. However, there was so much dysfunction in the event that, like, even though it looked good on the outside, inside the event was, my sister with mental health issues and kind of coming unglued. And, my brother and I both my brother was in recovery, and it was just a lot of drama and unspoken stuff. And then there was not really connection. Like we were all there physically together, but none of us were really connected and talking to each other. It was always kind of like this measuring of what's going on in your life and how are you being successful and stuff like that, but never a real connection emotionally. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would have looked at that because that was a big thing as being an only child. I desperately wanted siblings. Like that for me was the fantasy. I would look at people where there was, 3 or 4 kids and 2 parents and just think that's what I wanted. But, we weren't the only 2 people doing that. We were all kind of looking at each other, and it's about perception, isn't it? I perceive that was wonderful and all of that kind of stuff. So the holidays are there's so many layers, it's not just the drinking. It's all of these perceptions that we have about how these things should be compared to how they are. And I mean, I know when I had my kids, when they were younger, I caught myself one year getting in such a frenzy about, we got to do breakfast in Santa and we've got to do this and we've got to do that. And realizing how kind of out of control I had got with it in trying to create this picture perfect Christmas. And I wasn't like, they really didn't care. I mean, like, you do one thing, go and see Santa once. I was like booking everything, like 5 different things. What I was trying to do was create the Christmas that the child inside of me wanted, not the actual children that I had wanted.
Right.
And they're pretty easygoing, easily pleased. Basically they want presents to unwrap and they're good.
No, I think there's a lot of pressure there, especially as a parent. There's a lot of pressure. And, I was a single mom and raised my daughter on my own. And I remember having a lot of times where I would look at families and saying, that there was like this missing or longing, or it must have been better because there was a mom and a dad and a child and, this whole thing. And that wasn't, how it was, although we had great extended family. And so our holidays were still filled with people, but not necessarily. Sometimes it's so interesting because I think I don't know how it happened, but somewhere along the line, someone made the rule that you had to spend these holidays with your family members with all this pressure about what to do, what to give, what to bring, how to dress, the events you have to attend. And it's almost like you don't really have any choice in that. And I remember I was dating someone and his parents were divorced, and we had like 4 Christmases, right? Lauren was little and I'm dating this guy and I got to go to my parents. I got to go to his mom's. I got to go to his dad's. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was so much in just a short amount of time and all these expectations put on us by all these people. And it was very overwhelming. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that kind of have to deal with this during the holidays where they have multiple family members that they've got to go visit and attend, and expectations and gifts and kind of like showing up looking happy and that you're there and all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you kind of look back and deconstruct this stuff and think, I mean, I look back and I think, what was I thinking? Like I definitely have had years where I went totally overboard with presents to unwrap for like way too much stuff. And it's almost like a sort of mass delusion that we all kind of get caught up in. And it's all marketing. It's all like this external pressure that we just get so caught up in. And the last kind of maybe 3 years, I've really, really tried to be self-aware of all of this external pressure and perception and really kind of think about my choices and what I'm doing. Because the other thing is women and as mothers, we can just create a lot of hard work for ourselves trying to create this thing. And what we're actually trying to do is create a feeling, right?
Right. Absolutely.
We're trying to create a feeling of like this perfect feeling that Christmas or Thanksgiving tells us we should have. I think that's what we're chasing. So I just want to mention to you guys, Tamara and I are doing a couple of workshops in early December on how to get through the holidays. We're doing one on how to deal with the alcohol triggers, and we're doing another one on how to deal with families. If this is something you are struggling with, check them out. They're like, I don't know, a couple $100, something like that. They're in-depth workshops. We're going to give you some strategies and tools to really get through this stuff in a way that's more productive, that's healthier, how to have boundaries with families, all that kind of stuff. If you go to soberful.com, you can check out the details. But we're going to cover the stuff that I know that I definitely needed, but didn't have when I was first trying to deal with the holidays. So this all came to a head for me, Tamara. And I think it was my 3rd sober Christmas. So I was about 2.5 years sober. My 2nd sober Christmas, I volunteered to work. I was working for Chip then at Focus 12. And I volunteered to work on Christmas Day to provide somewhere for the clients to come. And then I think it was the 3rd Christmas. So the reason I had done that, and I don't think I could quite admit it to myself, was I didn't want to go home. So being able to say, oh, I have to work because I'm like the junior person, like that gave me a legitimate excuse to not go home to be with my mom. Because when I got sober, the difficulties in our relationship really came to a head and I found it really hard. So it was my 3rd sober Christmas. And I remember like maybe halfway through December, I was waking up in the middle of the night with anxiety attacks and I couldn't get back to sleep. And I kept going over and over in my head, being at home for Christmas in my mother's house where I was so unhappy. And I think it got to like, it was like the 22nd of December. And I think someone said this to me, you don't have to go. And that kind of hadn't occurred to me, you know, it's this obligation that you go home for Christmas. You know, if you're not, you know, single, I wasn't married, so you go home for Christmas. And someone said, if it feels that bad, you don't have to go. There are other things you could do. And someone saying that to me kind of like, it was like, oh, that had never occurred to me. And then I realized that this was so bad, it was threatening my mental health. Like I wasn't sleeping, I was anxious. So I think I called my mother on like the 22nd of December and said I wouldn't be coming home. And I told her the truth. I said, I don't want to. I feel really uncomfortable. And I told her the truth without trying to cause too much hurt. I didn't go into details, but I made it clear that I didn't want to come home. And I wasn't sure what to do. And I called my best friend and my best friend called me back, said, come to ours. Mum wants you to be there. I've known her family for years. And I went to drive to my mother's house on Christmas Eve to give her a present and wish her a happy Christmas, because that's what I was able to do. And that was about having boundaries. That's all I could do. And that's what I did. I gave her a present. It was very hard because she was very upset, but I had to put my well-being first. And that's what I had to do. And I went and spent Christmas with my best friend, and it was a very nice time. And I want to say it's from that moment that my relationship with my mother then began to improve. Now, I then went and did a lot of work on myself, a lot of work. But from that, our relationship then began to get better, to the point that maybe 3 years after that, I can't remember what I did the following Christmas. I think I spent it with her. I bought a house and my mum came and spent Christmas with me, and it was fine. Just the two of us. It was like it was fine. It was enjoyable. And I can now enjoy my mother's company, which is really quite a miracle. But that was kind of my breaking point. It was this enormous pressure that I had to do this thing. And if I did this thing, the cost to me was just very high. And it was kind of, I didn't realize there was a get out. I just thought that was the rule at Christmas, right? I didn't think that you were allowed to do something differently. So we have to begin to do things differently when we're sober, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I didn't stop going to my family's for the holidays, but I started having limits about my participation level. And that felt good for me. And my parents were, because I had their first grandchild, I mean, they would sit outside my house on Christmas morning at like 5 o'clock in the morning, waiting for her to wake up so they could see her open her presents. And it was just a lot. It would like start really early and just go all day long and into the evening. And it was just a lot. And for me, I just realized that I needed to have, and I didn't know this either. Like I actually had someone say to me, you don't have to do that the entire day. And I was like, I don't, this is what they expect. They expect to show up at my house in the morning, and they want me to come over there, and then I go back, and it's back and forth all day long. And they said, no, you can just tell them that you're going to come for this, and you'll see them then. And that's what I started to do. And it was much more enjoyable for me to just have a certain time frame to go and participate. And I found that my ability to kind of interact with my family was a lot more pleasant because the time that I spent with them was shortened versus me sitting there all day and just kind of stewing about having to be there all day and not wanting to do that.
Yeah. And that's kind of everything, isn't it? And this is actually some of the stuff we're going to be talking about in our workshops is really is how to do that, because it's revolutionary. I think it's very interesting as well, isn't it? It's because it's about the transition to adulthood and when you're children in the family home, that's where you have Christmas, and then you're an adult. And then when you're a young adult, you usually go home for Christmas. And then when you have your own family, how does that all work out? And it's kind of like breaking away from, like, we want to keep some of the traditions that we get from our families, right? But we also want to let go of the stuff that isn't serving us.
Absolutely. I think it's important to kind of even talk about, so when we're kids, oftentimes our parents unknowingly or in their best efforts maybe talk to us in certain ways that make us inside not feel very good. And one of the things that I noticed in early recovery was that those things started to really come up and really make, that was one of the reasons why the time frame had to be instilled, was because I noticed when I was around them, they would say things to me that would bring up such strong emotions. And I couldn't, for the longest time, I didn't know what that was. I just knew that I was like really upset and hurt around them. And I thought, why? They love me. Why do I feel this way? And I just realized that a lot of the stuff from my childhood had not been healed yet, but it had been triggered by their behavior, especially during the holidays, especially like my first holiday sober and not understanding and just having like these new feelings, right? New feelings. And then having that kind of stuff resurface that had not been dealt with. And so I just remember feeling very, very uncomfortable when certain conversations would come up. And from my parents, or they would make certain comments, I would just get so angry, and I just didn't. And a lot of times those feelings were so overwhelming that I felt like I needed a drink. I needed to just numb it because I didn't know what to do with it. And I really had to learn strategies. And I think that's what we're going to work on in our workshop, is that we don't understand where this stuff is coming from or what to do with it in order to support ourselves while we're going through this. And I think there's nothing more triggering than family, unresolved issues, the pressure of the holidays, and not having anything to numb it. It's a recipe for And so I think it's so important that our listeners understand that the tools that we're going to provide in our workshop are going to be those tools that allow you to support yourself in a healthier way when you go into the holidays, and even being able to have the information and understand, oh, that's why I'm feeling this way, or this is what that's about. And being able to have grounding skills and certain skills to support yourself during that process.
Yeah, you really hit the nail on the head there. And this is true when we get sober. We stop drinking, and a lot of the emotions and feelings that we were numbing and running and using alcohol to get away from are still going to be there, and we don't know how to deal with them. So we have to learn this stuff anyway. It's not just this time of year, but it's particularly intense this time of year. There's a kind of extra layer because of everything that we've been talking about to do with the holiday season that makes it especially hard. And these are it's just tools that we didn't have. And for me, that Christmas, when I decided I was going to put my mental health first, was revolutionary for me. I didn't know that was allowed.
Yes.
I just thought I had to do what pleased my mother and the people around me. I thought that how I felt was really irrelevant to how they felt. So that was a revolutionary step for me, to put my well-being ahead of other people's, knowing that when I made that choice, they would be hurt. And I knew there was no getting away from my mother being hurt, that I couldn't dress that up.
Right.
And I did what I could. I went and saw her on Christmas Eve for 20 minutes. I gave her a present. That was what I was capable of doing. There wasn't an argument. It wasn't nasty. I didn't cause more pain by that kind of stuff. And that was such a massive turning point in my sobriety, to realize that I had to prioritize my emotional well-being for me to be able to function in the world and be there for other people. And yeah, lo and behold, down the road, that relationship really healed, and we've had many, nice Christmases. And honestly, if I could fly my mother over for Christmas this year, I would. She's at the point where she finds it hard to get on an airplane, bless her, because she's almost 83. But and that is miraculous to me, that we've got to that point and that we can do those things.
It is beautiful, and it starts somewhere, right? It does start somewhere, and it's good to, it's good that you were able to have the tools and know how to do that. I mean, my strategy for dealing with difficult situations was just to run, to ignore, to drink, and so having the skills to have those difficult conversations and to put yourself and your needs first they are revolutionary thoughts, aren't they? They are just absolutely revolutionary. I just thought I had to do everything that my family wanted me to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So we want to, if you are, getting that feeling in the pit of your stomach as you approach, as you see all the stuff in the stores and the commercials and just all this kind of frenzy beginning to start, Tamara and I want you to know we know how you feel. We have been there, and you can get through this holiday season, not just sober, but you can get through it having boundaries and minimizing the impact that family members and all this other stuff can have on you. And, the skills and stuff that we learn to do that, it's not just stuff that will be useful during the holiday season. It's really stuff that is essential to our sobriety throughout the whole year. So thank you so much for listening. Anything to add, Tamara, before we finish about this time of year?
No, I think the takeaway is getting as much support as you can to learn how to navigate this stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Don't do it alone. This is a difficult time of year. So we'd love for you to join us in our workshops. They're taking place in early December over 2 days. You can sign up if you go to soberful.com. We are going to split them up and focus on 2 things. We're going to focus on strategies to deal with the triggers of drinking and strategies to deal with the triggers of family and all of that kind of pressure, and work with you to kind of create a way to deal with all of that and get through this sober. So thank you so much, Tamara.
Oh, you're welcome, Veronica. Good to talk with you.
And take care, everybody. Go to soberful.com to sign up for the workshops, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.